What's good, everyone? You're listening to WKNC 88.1 FM HD2 Raleigh. We are a student-run nonprofit radio station uh, based in North Carolina State University. I'm Plover, and this is Off the Record. Here with me today is Ryan O'Dowd of the CFR Council. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. If you wouldn't mind, this would be a great way to kick things off. Maybe just tell us about yourself, where you're from, just who am I talking to right now?
Hey, I'm Ryan O'Dowd. I've lived in North Carolina most of my life. I've spent time in Rocky Mount. I've lived in Raleigh, Durham. I live in Greenville. And basically, I'm part of the CFR Council, which is a cooperative of artists and musicians who work together to put on shows to premiere and show DIY musicians, especially outsider musicians, in North Carolina.
Awesome. That's really cool. What does DLI stand for, by the way?
That's do it yourself. So it's less of a genre than it is an approach to the production of the music, especially since the era of grand recording and what major labels is over. Artists increasingly have turned to one another to be able to organize to put on their own shows.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, it's really cool. So this is kind of a record label and also like a collective. Is that how that works?
Yeah, we are a record label. We're releasing our 33rd album, Bitter Inks Leviathan, actually at the fest. But we're bigger than a record label. The record label started out as a way to organize people, but now it's kind of turned into a music festival and a monthly magazine and so on.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I was checking out a lot of your other content. There's so much more than just the label, of course. But yeah, is sort of a DIY aesthetic, and that is that something you also like personally like to listen to as well? Is that something is that just a job, or is that like a sort of an ethos for you, if you will?
Well, for me, it's an ethos, and it is a job too.
Mhm.
But it derives from when I was. I'm kind of an old man. Sadly, I'm 36. But back when I was in high school, I used to live in Asheville, and I used to go to basement shows all the time in the era almost before the internet, and that inspired me. I really decided I wanted to be a DIY artist when I was in high school, and I wanted to do this very typical thing where you ride around in a van and book all your own shows. Only back then it was sending your cassettes out, and nowadays it's trading links on the internet, which is, thank goodness, much easier.
Sorry, I think it cut out for a second. I didn't catch that last part.
I said only back in the day it was trading cassettes, and nowadays it's trading links on the internet, which, thank goodness, is much easier.
Yeah, no, for sure. That I know you guys still do physical media, so I'm glad that hasn't gone away. But no, that is definitely a more convenient sort of way of trading music. Does that help with like kind of breaking down regional barriers at all? Like usually, we'd have to ship something as far as X state, but now it's a bit easier.
Yeah, totally. Because of course there's still great independent record stores out there, and there's great independent media like you yourself are doing right now. But at the same time, costs have to be kept down if you're an independent artist and you're working with other independent artists. And so, of course, being able to just trade data for free is while it killed the record industry, it's great for independent artists. So I'm kind of happy it happened.
Yeah, we do love to see that. So there is one specific thing that you wanted to talk about, which was your sort of festival performance thing coming up this weekend. Could you let the people know what that's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's called American Babylon 6, and as you might guess, it's the sixth one of these that we've put on. It's our yearly showcase where we kind of collect all the various friends that we've made throughout the year and try to get them all in one place at one time. We feed the bands for free. We pay the bands. We do charge, of course, ticket prices for the audience, but it all goes to overhead and to directly paying the bands for their to encourage them to go on tour and encourage them to network with one another, and which is another great opportunity that it allows artists to meet with other artists. So if you are an artist, we encourage you to come out because you're going to meet a bunch of other artists, and then maybe you can also cut out the middleman.
Sure.
But it's called American Babylon 6, and it's from the 2nd to the 5th of Labor Day this year. We have 33 different performers who are going to be playing. We have vendors. There will be performance artists. There will be painters, and it's just a really great time. And it's 18 plus, but we encourage everyone to come that possibly can because it's direct support.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like the kind of networking capacity too. Is not just, oh, sit there, face forward, look at music. There's kind of more of an actual sort of community feel going on, which I really like that kind of approach. Are there any specific, what are a few artists that are going to be there? Just a general overview.
Sure, there's a Durham act, Durham and Hickory, named Rumble Tramp, which is an excellent old time folk band mixed with like a punk band at the same
Mhm.
time. We're going to have Canned, which is a wonderful performance art act that's kind of a noise act mixed with comedy. It involves a lot of fishing, and likes to bang on a Pringles can. And then we have Happy Slap, who is the genius known as Archduke Happy, and he basically, wow, he energetically dresses in all yellow and uses multiple flashing lights and like loud, aggressive uh, um, noise rock music, but it's also got this kind of surreal and even Dadaist aspect to it. And then there's my act, Bitter Ink, which is I call it Astro Industrial. It's kind of industrial by way of space jazz, like Sun Ra Orchestra and Nine Inch Nails, if I'm being really, really presumptuous about myself, that kind of thing. But yeah, there's going to be many more other great acts as well.
For sure, yeah, and that's really cool that you're also pulling up. We love to see that. Yeah, I was checking out some of the artists. There are a lot of really funny names. I personally would love to see breakdancing Ronald Reagan myself. Just to
Yeah,
experience
and
that.
also his name happens to be Johnny Cash, which is funny too.
Whoa.
He's from Los Angeles. He'll be out. He's our VIP Noise Hollywood artist, and he puts on really wild, mostly hysterical performances involving. It's very hard to describe, but it's definitely humorous and it's definitely loud.
Gotcha. So you mentioned that he was from Los Angeles. So I understand this will be mostly North Carolina artists, but so there's going to be a few others kind of coming around from the area who sort of share a similar vibe to the artist playing.
Yeah, exactly. It's about half the artists are from North Carolina, and about half the artists are from outside of North Carolina. And the ones that are from North Carolina, there are kind of old tried and true friends. They've reappeared, year after year.
Yeah.
We've added a few extra this year from North Carolina. Pusa Puppet is a wonderful puppeteer from Greensboro, North Carolina, Benjamin Martin, and he puts on this very strange and extravagant, EDM meets Sesame Street sort of thing. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm already sold personally. That sounds amazing. So you mentioned that this is going to be a very sort of visual thing as well as just an auditory thing. You mentioned there'd be some kind of painters. Is there going to be just like art going on while the music's going on, or is it going to be like art then music?
Oh, I believe that there will be in terms of visual art, there's one film which is Chicken Licken by Will Nygaard, and there will also be performance artist. Hal Martinez is mostly more of a theatrical or performance artist. There will also be visuals kind of sort of tied into certain people's performances.
Mm-hmm.
And then we should also have just like paintings and drawings about, displayed in various areas, and maybe even you could pick one up if you're feeling generous.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So artists are going to kind of really go all out here, kind of really sell themselves visually as well. Like there's going to be a lot of like lighting effects, kind of just adding things that add to the music as well as just being standalone visual art, I'm assuming.
Yes, especially the more it gets towards the end of the night, so it's more compatible with light shows and stuff like that.
Yes. That's exciting. And this isn't just a festival course. This is a festival kind of in near lake, kind of. Is it almost in the woods?
It is. It's right on the edge. It's in Panther Lake, which is 8196 Panther Lake Road outside Willow Spring, which is just in the bottom of Wake County. And my friend Sam owns the place, and it's normally just like a fishing venue, but he lets us take it over once a year, and we do this with it. And there's boats, there's canoes, there's you could put up tents, you could go in the forest, there's trails behind, and all that kind of fun stuff as well, kind of outdoorsy time. So it kind of gives you a lot of different environments that you can put yourself into if you want to. You'd be near the stage, but you could also be, rather far away from the stage, hanging out in the woods if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. And does it kind of like just to stay? I'm assuming the stages are kind of like in the middle there. Does that kind of like add to the ambiance of often like maybe some electronic act and then like the woods around that? That's really cool contrast.
Oh, of course, and we could push the music like there's only one road that it's right by, so it's fairly rural. There's a gas station down the street. It's not like the middle of nowhere, but it's pretty well out there. And yeah, you can go hang out on the dock if you want to and listen to music, or you can go all the way climb up. There's a little rock face that you can do rock climbing on if you want to. There's a little creek. There's and of course, like I said, there's the woods as well. So it really, I think it definitely adds.
Mhm. Yeah, that's super sick. So I understand that creating festivals is not the easiest thing of all time. Were there any specific kind of maybe logistical challenges with like getting it into like a woods for 4 days and like a massive vibe? Was there any like very unique challenges to sort of the area? Or was this like pretty decent?
Yeah. Actually, that was part of the. Oh man, the AMBAB one. The dream was always to put it in the woods, but AMBAB one ended up we had to scale it down a little bit because it turns out finding someone with property that's willing to let you use it for a kind of counterculture festival is not always the easiest thing to do. So it took us until number 4 before we had someone who would really be on board with us. Sam's an amazing human being for doing it,
Mhm.
and now he's so attached to us, and we're so thankful for him that this is our home now.
Nice, nice. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you locked that down. Let's see. You mentioned there was a film called Chicken Licken. Is this a premiere? Because I was looking it up, and there's not a whole lot of material out there for Chicken Licken. If we could just kind of shed the light on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, I don't want to give away too much,
Of
but I will
course.
say that it's an experimental film, and it has comedy, but it's deeply surreal. Maybe like a darker version of what you might see on Adult Swim if you pulled it out and made it
Yeah.
an hour long. And it's by Will Mygett. He's the director and the writer, and he does much of the acting. Although he has a little cast of friends that he makes use of as well. He did a film at our second American Babylon. It was American Babylon 2 End Times, and he did a film called Burrowing Worms, and it went over extremely well, but it was very strange and hard. It's not. I can't really say it's cerebral, but there's a lot coming at you at once.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'm really glad he's back, and that we can keep this tradition going. That sounds like an amazing way to cap off a night, because that is the last show. Is that correct on that night?
Oh yeah, Sunday night, big night, and it ends with the film. I'm right there by the lake, and of course the sound will be coming through the PA system, so it'll be nice loud sound to go with the film, and it's going to be fun.
Let's go. So, Panther Lake is. I've heard the 20 minutes outside of downtown thrown around. Is that like? Yeah, you mentioned one
Yeah.
road. Is this the? How are people going to be kind of accessing this?
Oh, they'll drive there. It's Panther Lake Road, so
Mhm.
they'll have to drive out there. There'll be a little bit of excuse me. There'll be a little bit of carpooling and such as well.
Mhm.
Some organizing. I believe you can reach it by Uber if you need to, but it's not too far out there.
Yeah. That's really good. Again, everything I've heard so far sounds amazing, and this seems like a really cool way to spend your Labor Day weekend. So this is all run by CFR. Maybe we could maybe talk a bit about who CFR is. They, as you mentioned, they work with artists to try to promote them, but also do kind of at least a monthly zine issues. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm the design editor for Issues Magazine, and it's sort of a 90s style alternative zine,
Hmm.
except that it does have it's primarily on the web now, but we do have subscribers that we do print out and send copies out to if they want to. But of course, most people just want to check out the image, and that's perfectly fine as well. But the real concept of the zine is to mix little showcases called impressions of recent albums that have been put out by people that are DIY musicians, but mix that with kind of surreal um, articles and article adjacent sorts of things, which are just meant to put you in a different headspace than you're normally in.
Hmm. Yeah. I was checking those out, and that for sure did that. I was scrolling through, like trying to process everything. And there were also a lot of interviews. Those were kind of a pretty key part of the zine as well.
Yeah, I try to interview one or two artists a month. We have a featured artist every month, featured artist interview. I have also interviewed sort of various fringe figures. I've interviewed Lord Rael. I've interviewed. I'm sorry.
Mm.
I've interviewed a Vermin Supreme. people that are kind of on the periphery of the mainstream, but
Yeah.
they're not quite the mainstream.
I can definitely see the kind of vibe you're going for there. What's the difference between like you would say like for me most interviews I consume are kind of through an audio recording or something. How does it kind of differentiate to see that like written down like how you have or sort of presented between surreal articles and such?
Well, it came naturally out of what I liked and what I've
Hmm.
consumed throughout my life. And I just happen to hook up with people that are also into somewhat similar things, and sometimes we've used the opportunity to be able to kind of encourage one another to keep working, and sometimes we've used the opportunity to influence one another in ways that we didn't know. Like there's the whole there's tons of bands and artists I don't know, and so having other people to work with on the zine every month gives me access to things I wouldn't have even thought of to look at myself, and hopefully I give them access to that as well.
For
And so
sure.
it works out really well.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so you're able to kind of network, and then is that how you find the other artists to feature? Is this kind of like a go through Bandcamp to see what the vibe is type of situation?
You got it. Now it's all connected in one giant blanket on thread. We used to just call it the network, and then we were just like, well, what if we just maybe a little more formal, just formal enough to get ourselves above board, sort
Yeah.
of gets a little access to the mainstream and see what we do. But yeah, it's all about just connecting artists together.
Mhm.
That's the point.
Yeah, that's that's really great. You also like to shout out other art. I know some bands from Chicago out there that's really cool that this has that kind of pull from being a North Carolina focused thing. Is there do you see any differences between like the different regional scenes of DIY or very alternative music, I guess?
Oh, absolutely. And my friend calls it sub underground.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good name.
Well, obviously, like LA and New York, they just have everything in the world there.
Hmm.
But what really comes really interesting is in these kind of like bigger, small cities, like Fargo, North Dakota, or Kansas City, or like Minneapolis. Like you get this kind of mindset with people that are there that they're not gonna be, they're not gonna be picked up on the highway, or not gonna be picked up at the local venue like you would if you were in like LA or New York.
Yeah.
So they get this kind of they start to get listless, I think, and they start to just be like, well, I'm never going to be famous, so I'm just going to do really strange things. And so that's what I like to get. That's what I like to mine as much as possible. But you mentioned Chicago. Chicago's got an amazing experimental music scene that goes back a long time, of course, well before my era. But yeah, I find a lot of the great experimental and sub underground bands that I like are from Pittsburgh. They're from Chicago. Of course, Austin is famous for this sort of thing. Phoenix. There's a lot of like a lot of what I did is I just spent like a year of my life getting onto every single DIY city page on Facebook. Like I just kept like trying to be on all of them, inviting people to be on all of them, and asking to be people's friends, getting denied, trying again. But as much as I got the time, so that's what I've done. And also in as far as we're talking about regions where we've operated, we technically have reviewed people from Greece,
Oh,
from Latvia, lots of people from the UK, Canada, Brazil is a big one that keeps sending us things. Korea. So like, believe it or not, this is touched worldwide.
oh my God. Yeah. That that's so great. I had no idea this was a global endeavor. That's so cool. And I'm sure that the differences between regions get exponential when you go like abroad and you have like different kind of like literally global sounds kind of do those like creep into even like the harsh noise projects of Greece or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Like people from Athens, in fact, yeah, harsh noise. I had a guy from Athens buy a copy, which cost me like $11 to send him. But I was like, that's fine with me because I just think it's cool that I could say I did that.
Yeah.
So
that that's a priceless story right there for sure. Yeah, that's really cool that you're focusing on like breaking out of specifically like the production of it. How do you think that ties into like the actual structure of the music? Like it's not just about the creation of music in a very DIY way, but also the music itself is often kind of outside of the standard ways of song construction.
Well, you know what? I think in addition to the fact that it just encourages experimentalism is not exactly the right word, but it encourages a kind of reaching for something that they haven't heard, and they don't. The people that are doing it don't necessarily even know what it is, but it's like they're like, well, I just want to do something else because I've heard all this stuff. But then also, I think that there's a huge growth in like a person with a phone or a person with a laptop making, so like so much of the music is based on like software synthesizers and stuff like that, which is kind of like almost a natural outgrowth of the material that's available to people on an easy way. So like you end up with a lot of like one person acts that's just like some person in a basement in Pittsburgh just doing God knows what and just puddling on their phone, but they end up making this crazy sounding really cool album.
Yeah.
And then they somehow, through friends of friends, end up filtering it to us, and then we know them. So that's cool.
Oh, yeah, those are great connections to make. And these would often be like, how would you describe kind of like a few minutes of kind of just some kind of noise that happens to be created, maybe improvisationally or something like that? Like, what would be like obviously it's very hard to categorize everything from Sub Underground, but what are some like standout things to kind of have some concrete examples, if you will?
Well, you've got different streams that are kind of feeding everyone, and insofar as like, the thing is, the more isolated someone is, assuming that they're devoted to their craft, the more isolated that they are, the more weird it's going to get, but also the less likely it is to get to you. So it's like, there's like a spectrum of like pop with a little bit of strangeness, which is much more likely to get around so that we could actually hear it, all the way to the far extreme of, someone just making buzz noises and they're just, using some kind of jerry-rigged. You have people that are like amateur electrical engineers and stuff like that. They're making these like little pedals that they just turn knobs on, and they just kind of do it in the moment. But then you also, the other thing is this other metric, which is like the people who are completely naive compared to the people who like know everything about music there is to know. And you get both of those people as well, because the people that know nothing are going to sound new. But also, if you know enough to not play what's already been played, then you'll sound really new too. So it's those are kind of the two metrics, I'd say.
Yeah, it's really cool to intersect. So you mentioned a lot of like remote collaboration and kind of talking over things like Bandcamp. What would you say is it's kind of the importance of like a physical show, like for example, this festival this weekend, or like a random venue in, let's say, Pittsburgh, where the harsh noise acts can play? How does that like kind of foment and grow the sub underground scene?
To me, I think this is just my opinion now, but I think it's incredibly important to play something out to people. I kind of have like the mentality that if you make a noise and no one else hears it, have you made music? Like and that could just be me being a gatekeeper. I don't know, but this is just my natural intuition and inclination towards things. And more importantly, what it gets you with is with other people who care about the same things that you care about and that like the same things that you like. And I think that's, it seems to be carry over no matter what culture people are in. They do like to be with other people who care about the same things and like the same things they like, I think. So, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I guess you can kind of see like, if there's like one staple venue, you kind of see like a specific sound or scene kind of grow around that venue. You have like regulars coming there, and that can kind of almost influence, maybe not a whole city, but like at least that neighborhood or something like that.
Oh, that's absolutely true too. Again, like I said, like Fargo had this with Black Ring Rituals and the Seagrave Studios up there, and there's different. I don't want to, just say a bunch of stuff like that, but like, yeah, there's you can evolve a community out of a specific venue. You could evolve a community around a specific label. You could evolve a community about a certain sound, or even a tradition of having a certain sound. Like New Orleans still has like certain kinds of jazz that they've been playing for the last 80 years or whatever, but at the same basis, the idea of American Babylon is to try to sew as many of those threads together as we possibly can, which is why we prefer to say DIY and outsider as opposed to, prescriptive labels about what we can do, because there is a range of bands that will be performing. It won't just be one sound at all.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's amazing that's kind of been able to build up and also diversify like that. And all that's kind of connected into one, at least vaguely, through the CFN Council. Am I saying that right?
CFR.
CFR. I'm so sorry.
You bet.
So how exactly were you able to sort of come into a position where you could interact with all these? Like, what was kind of the roots of working into this sort of DIY label era? How does one kind of get into that?
Well, I started where I think it starts with most people, which is I started making my own music when I was
Mm-hmm.
young, and the world changed around me, and the internet grew up. I was like in middle school when I got the internet,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole scaffolding of the infrastructure of the world kind of popped it in this direction where you could kind of have direct contact with everybody. And then I said, well, how am I going to promote? How am I going to do this? Because I knew I wanted to play music, and I knew I wanted to play shows. And eventually I realized, well, if I want to play shows, I'm going to have to put on shows. And then I realized just, simple reciprocity is, if I want to be on someone else's ticket, then I have to put them on my ticket. And then it just came out of an evolution of doing whatever I like already and just trying to grow and then help as many other people as I can.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you find any like similar kind of infrastructure to what you were seeing, or was this kind of at least in your area, it's sort of a pioneering project?
I would say that what is the word? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're all good.
The kind of penetration of it is kind of pioneering. Like doing it amongst tying all the different things together is pioneering. But people, like we were saying before, people collect themselves naturally around certain things, certain scenes, certain buildings, certain bands, certain genres. Even certain ways of thinking, because we are also very LGBTQ plus friendly and things like that. And we just a while ago, it was originally me and someone named Echo Rose and someone named Gray, and the three of us were like, what do we want to do? How are we going to make this actually work and grow? And then the big question was, how do we pay the artists? Because that's a really big thing that doesn't happen, because there's just not a lot of money in it. So like, how can we get people actually a little bit of money for the music that they make and the art that they make? And then the idea of doing a nonprofit came into play, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting, and especially the nonprofit angle, being able to turn that around and like actually get some money in that, because you kind of think of like the sort of starving artist stereotype, and actually having some money in that is a really great way to promote this kind of sound. Yeah, you mentioned that this is, for example, very queer friendly. There are various subcultures that could kind of really connect to this music. Is like the area, maybe North Carolina or just the general area, have those kind of subcultures that were conducive to it, or was like the culture of North Carolina kind of able to work into this sort of DIY aesthetic?
Sure, especially by sewing them together, by threading them together, because like there's too many of them to name, but there's a punk subculture, there's a folk punk subculture, there's like an EDM subculture, there's a noise subculture, there's an experimental subculture, and then there's just a lot of people who are just in their house doing things and they don't know where to start, I guess. I do think that the internet has allowed for things like this to evolve more successfully than they ever would have if the internet didn't exist, because some of these things are a little esoteric, and but it turns out that there are lots of people around interested in it. It's just we wouldn't have known that without the internet. For
sure. Yeah, that's a really great way to make that connection, because like as you mentioned, the cities like LA, New York, kind of just you can't walk 5 feet without bumping into a noise pop band, but like over here it maybe takes a bit more of a threading together and a combining of those subcultures, like you mentioned.
Exactly, and I it just beats me up. I think about like maybe 30 or 40 years ago, there might have been someone just sitting in their house, Like now, and they never got heard by anybody besides themselves and maybe their family that was annoyed by them. And then, and like, but they didn't know that like maybe next city over there was like 5 people, and then city, two cities over from that maybe there was 10 people. It's a brick by brick thing, but it's fun.
Yeah, this is a great time to to be alive and be in music for sure. Again, speaking of being alive and being music, there is live music coming this weekend, of course, being American Babylon 6. If there was one single artist that you were like, hey, y'all, come out of here, and I think that maybe specifically the listeners of, say, an alternative college station would really enjoy, what would that be?
That would be Imbraza.
Okay.
Imbraza is a noise pop artist out of Los Angeles. Actually, they're a trio, and they'll be playing on Saturday the 3rd at 9. And they're really good, and they're on the more accessible end of this kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah. I got you. Yeah, it's a good way to get people in there, and then also maybe be able to see the other acts beforehand and kind of build up through that way. Which is always a great way. I'm wondering, do you like that kind of festival style of like, you have the early acts, the kind of opening ones, and then you kind of draw it towards and maybe build around the more like quote unquote accessible one, which I guess in the sub underground scene is all relative, but still.
Well, I mean, it's, I think that structure is in people's mind, whether you want it to be there or not. That's just what, people expect there to be an opener and a headliner. And so I would say that we work with the structure that's already in their head. We don't, in all honesty, like we test how much we can be subversive. But when it comes to that, putting the names up top that most people are going to want to hear is probably the smart thing to do. So that's what we do. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, great. Is there anything else you want to specifically mention about the festival while we're here?
Yeah, it's American Babylon 6. It's September 2nd through 5th this weekend, Labor Day weekend at Panther Lake in Raleigh. $20 for a 1-day pass, $40 for a 4-day pass, which will get you free camping as well. There'll be some snacks and stuff if you need them. We're CFR Council. We're a cooperative. We're just doing our best to try to get artists, a little bit of scratch and just get them to have fun and network with one another. And if that's something you're interested in, by all means, please come and please be generous. And am I allowed to say my Cash App?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
And it's just Cash App, $ American Babylon. And anything that's a note of artist fund will go straight 100% to the artist, won't even be touched by the rest of us.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great philosophy. Are there any like other ways to like find y'all on social media or anything, or like a website?
Yeah, there's an official event page on Facebook, American Babylon 6. Commodity Fetish Records and Issues Magazine are also available on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, bitter_ink_official. Other than that, and of course, commodityfetishrecords.com. Other than that, this is just about artists and working people who are artists.
Yeah, of course. And what would be some good ways to, like, for example, preview the artist beforehand? Where would you go to look at the individual artists and kind of see who you want to go for?
If you have a Facebook, go to the official event page, which is just American Babylon 6, the number 6, and all the artists are listed right there. And we have already some uploaded their Bandcamps and such, and we're going to continue to do that throughout the week as well.
Nice. So just kind of check Bandcamp to see what the vibe is there.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe all the artists that are on the flyer, which is available on the event page, have multiple social media things.
Nice. Out of curiosity, does CFR have any upcoming releases of their own? Is there anything kind of maybe looking a little bit beyond this weekend?
Well, actually, like I said, Bitter Ink Leviathan is coming out on the 3rd, and that will be at the actual Fest, American Babylon 6. We don't have anything prospectively at the moment because we're pretty occupied with this. We'll probably start looking again after this weekend.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, yeah. If there's anything you want to talk about, that's all good. Otherwise, this has been a great interview and a really cool insight into a scene I'm honestly not too familiar with myself.
Yeah, well, I thank you so much for the opportunity and for being so cordial. And show up if you want.
Of course, yeah. I'd love to be there. I haven't gone camping in far too long. That'd be a great way to get back into it.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. See ya.